Hello, Your Honor. Hello, jury. Today I'll be speaking in defense of loud acting. Is this what court's like? I don't know. Right, so there was people. Those people made entertainment. They made stories and people would act in these stories, and those people needed recognition. People made awards for those people to reward those who excelled well. And how do you excel? You perform the hardest emotions there are to perform, and how do you do that? You scream, you cry, you shout, and you get your Oscar. Until things got meta. And performances like that started to look desperate, Oscar baity, and a new form of acting came to the forefront and was put on a pedestal. Subtle acting. Out with the old and in with the new. Within recent years, I've noticed this starting to crop up a little bit more. Firstly, just in YouTube videos, they were mainly just suggesting that although there's a time and a place, or as a Black Eyed Peas would say, scream, shout and let it all out, there also needs to be more of a place for actors doing more stripped back performances and presenting emotions in a different, maybe more complex way. And I also champion this, don't get me wrong. That being said, like most things, I think people take something that is underrated or underappreciated, and instead of elevating the love for what they like, they knock down the opposing one to a point where that starts to feel underrated. Loud acting is not inherently bad acting. I say this because I rarely see someone praising great solo performances without dragging loud ones. I think there are a few reasons for this. And the first reason I briefly mentioned earlier, and it's all about intention. When we watch a loud, emotional performance, we often look through it, and regardless of if it's performed really well, what we see is an actor shouting that they want an Oscar. It just feels like Oscar bait. Oscar bait is a term used in the film community for movies that appear to have been produced for the sole purpose of earning nominations for Academy Awards. Why did I say the word like that? You can also obviously have Oscar baity performances to go along with the Oscar baity films. These are many films that appear to be made with the overt intent of gaming the system, but they usually just come across as pandery. Some audiences in turn avoid those films in favor of those that did receive a nomination. In a 2014 study of 3,000 films released since 1985, the 1990 film Come See the Paradise was labeled as the most deliberately targeted for the Oscars. It received mainly good reviews but did not receive any nominations and failed at the box office. That being said, Oscar baity film generally still win Oscars. It's like what they're designed to do at the end of the day. But I feel like what they gain with Oscars, they fail at winning over the people, which can feel more important in a way. A prime example would be Eddie Redmayne in The Theory of Everything. This is a bait performance as he's playing a world famous guy in a biopic. It's tragic, it's full of emotion, and we have a clear point of reference for all the things happening in the film. He won Best Actor. Yet when I Google his performance for opinions, the first one I find is this one.
I think his performance as Stephen Hawking was so bad and forced. His dialogue delivery was pretty poor, and the only reason why he won the Oscar was because the Academy seems to reward effort over actual performance. This is the reason biographies keep winning every year, with performances like Michael Keaton in Birdman, Ethan Hawke in First Reformed, and Dakota Johnson in Suspiria get ignored.
The last section about the other actors who they feel should have won is I think a key point we should hone in on here, because I think people get caught up with what they wanted to happen, that when something else wins, they just automatically will label it as bad. So like when Green Book won Best Picture, people were annoyed. But that now doesn't mean Green Book is just inherently a bad film, but just that they thought Roma was a better one and would have been a more important win. The point is Eddie Redmayne's performance in The Theory of Everything Oscar bait? Yes. Is it in your face? Yes. Is it obvious? Yes. But ultimately, is it good? Yeah. Forget about the intentions or the other performances you preferred. At the core of it, when you watch it, is it still a good and incredibly hard performance to deliver? Yeah. Moving on to another point, I've watched a lot of actor roundtables, and many actors have spoke about how comedic acting is more difficult than emotional one.
Comedy's more difficult, yes. I can't do what Billy Crystal does, Eddie Murphy, Adam.
I feel like this point has a big impact on audiences' perception, as it kind of undervalues emotional performances. I think a lot of people kind of think it's easier to scream and cry, whereas comedic timing is much harder to hit, which is a fair point, I agree. But although these are the opinions of top actors, they're still just humans. And I feel like the Dunning-Kruger effect is a little bit at play here with some of the stuff they're saying. Highly skilled individuals tend to underestimate their relative competence, assuming that tasks which are easy for them are also easy for others. So less comedic actors are the ones pushing that comedic acting is harder, while the comedic ones push back on that.
Is it easy for you to cry? You had that big moment in Uncut Gems where you're really emotional. Was that easier than laughing?
Maybe not. I'm not great at crying.
It all really depends on who you are and what you're good at. And I think all of this has affected the current generation's perception of acting. The amount of TikToks I have seen slating some loud performances from like the current best actors of this generation, it hurts my soul. The most common ones being Zendaya in Euphoria, Margot Robbie in Babylon, and Adam Driver in Marriage Story. It's obviously not even that hard to convey you're sad or angry. just gotta run around the room while screaming and hollering at the top of your lungs. Which again is a point I can understand from the outside a little bit. I get it, it just looks like a bit of fun, it looks messy. But that chaos is also controlled, and it's also very easy to feel silly while doing it, which I feel like a lot of people don't talk about enough. As someone who's like tried acting before, and I use tried, you know, in the loosest sense possible, but like to be on set and like with your castmates and maybe a few hundred extras, the director and assistant directors and all the crew, the guy holding the boom mic and camera guy, along with all the other roles like the person in charge of all the extras and the person in charge of food and the person doing hair or whatever, to be able to just let yourself go and not feel judged in that moment and just have full faith in the writers or the directions being given to you by your director, or even just stuff you've came up with in that moment, and scream your tiny little heart out in those circumstances in front of everyone, and to not feel silly and to trust in what you're doing, and that the people who are watching it aren't gonna just find it silly, and then do that for how many takes in a row that you have to do it for. I just think it's really impressive. Look, I loved Paul Mescal's performance in Aftersun, but I also loved Zendaya's performance in season 2 episode 3 or 4, episode 4, and I just think quiet or loud, if done well, why can't we just love both?